your thoughts on the Levrone comeback? Will that have any impact on this year's Olympia? I mean, it's great for him. I'm not going to be an asshole and say that it's not a good thing. I mean, it's his choice. It was the IFBB's choice to allow him to make that comeback. I think it brings great entertainment for the Olympia lineup. I think it's good for Kevin, man. I mean, he has some unfinished business that he wanted to have. I don't necessarily know what that means, because this title's mine. I think we do know that. A lot of his fans have come out of the woodwork, but I'll be honest, man, they're very unrealistic. You're definitely putting him above a lot of other great champions. And I'm just gonna keep it real, because that's what we do at the Gifted channel. What do the other guys think? We're talking about like the Cedric McMillans, the Justin Comptons, the Dallas McCarvers. We're talking about my kid Josh over in Australia. What about the William Bonacs? Like, what about those guys? What do you guys think about this shit? Because he ain't stealing my thunder. He's kind of stealing yours. And let's just keep it real. Roland Winkler, Big Ramy, Dexter, Shawn Rhoden, and many others probably have a lot to say about this. As far as me, it don't bother me at all. It's just another person I gotta, I guess, potentially stand next to. Line these guys up, I kill them every year. That's just not even talking shit. For all you guys that think I'm out here talking trash, I mean, these are facts, man. I mean, I slay them all down. Line them up, I kill them.
Welcome inside the RXMuscle studios for another episode of Iron Debate, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition and Quest Nutrition. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. Glad you can join us Thursday, August 11th, 2016. We are 34 days out of Olympia 2016, and what you saw right there was the five-time champion Phil Heath laying it down, giving his opinion on the return of Kevin Levrone, and talking about the impact that has on his as well as the rest of the field's thunder. Let's introduce our contestants for tonight's episode. First, we go to Portland, Maine, and bring in the man they call the technician, Chris Aceto. Chris, how you doing today?
How you guys doing?
You're ready.
I want to thank Derek, a regular listener. John, if you see that, I've come into the 21st century and I have new earphones. Compliments of Derek. I don't know Derek's last name, but he sent them off to Dave, and Dave sent them to me. Thank you very much.
We go to Guadalajara, Mexico, bringing the man they call Boss Number 2, John Romano. John, how you feeling today?
Clearly, I'm coming to you from a third world country, as I have no earphones.
Chris Aceto.
So either we're incredibly ahead or incredibly behind.
I live in Maine, dude. We're like fourth world. So, anywhere in Mexico is one step ahead of us. Trump's going to build like a encasement over our state.
Dome. Yes.
Well, usually we get two comments on Chris Aceto, and about 98% of them about his headphones. Well, today he stepped up his headphone game. Last episode, it was about the hair. The hair game was strong, and the hair game is strong this afternoon as well. As we come back in studio and welcome in the man with all the final words on all topics, Dave Palumbo. Dave, 34 days out of Olympia 2016.
I just got to say, Chris, you look like Slim Shady with the new headphones. It's very modern and up to date. We got to thank Derek for.
Well, Dave, regarding the hair, I stopped slicking it back because, if you can believe it, somebody told me recently you look like you wear your hair like Bill Maher, and he's like, I love Bill Maher, but he's like, he looks like 65 or 60. So I said, you know what? I'm going to wear it down and like a Justin Bieber type.
Yeah, you look a little Justin Bieberish, I was going to say.
That's one of the comments we got last week, that Chris Aceto, the technician, one of the premier bodybuilding gurus, has a Justin Bieberish hairstyle. How do you respond to that?
I'll take it. So long as I can look under 40. I need to, when I do these wrap-ups, we got to have some youth on the at the Olympia wrap-up. Between me, Dave, and John, there's like 250 years of collective bodybuilding wisdom. So one of us has to look under 50.
Well, speaking of Bill Maher, tomorrow afternoon, depending on availability. Keep it locked to the RXMuscle channel, the YouTube channel, as well as RXMuscle.com. We may have, actually, not the YouTube channel, I lie, the Facebook group. So if you're following us on our official Facebook page, we may have another episode of RX After Hours. Dave, what is the likelihood that we have another episode of that?
Yeah, damn right. Let's do it. If everyone's around, Chris and John, we'll do After Hours. I'm going to call Jimmy the Bull, I think. We'll see if you get him in studio even.
Our producer,
that would be good. Tell him
Romano's whole life is after hours, dude. He can talk. You can do like an after hours 24 on one topic.
well,
Let him just run for 24 hours. And he won't run out of material.
We wanted to give props to our producer, Johnny Stiles, who has really taken us into the forefront of live streaming technology. Well, he's managed a way to get us on Facebook live stream. So we had the show last Friday, and it got a ton of views, and a lot of you told us that you enjoyed it. You enjoyed the loose conversation. We'll try to bring that again. Keep it locked to RXMuscle.com. If you're not following us on Facebook, it is facebook.com/RXMuscle.com, all one word. Let's get right to it. This show started with a video recently released by Phil Heath in response to the question of what he thinks about Kevin Levrone entering the 2016 Olympia after his long hiatus. Now, there's been all sorts of banter about bringing back the old school look against today's generation, and then the prognostication as far as where Kevin Levrone will place. Will he be top 10? Will he be top 6? We have two members of this panel who believe that Kevin Levrone will, in fact, go into Vegas and win the 2016 Olympia. But there you have Phil Heath talking about how his entrance not only takes away his thunder, but the thunder of the rest of the field. John Romano, we're going to start with you on this one. What do you make of Phil Heath? Let's start with the video before we get into this topic. What did you make of that video?
Well, Phil kind of has to say what he says. He's not going to get up there and say, "Oh yeah, I'm scared as hell. I'm going to get my ass kicked." So it's like your wife telling you you're great in bed. I mean, what's she going to do? Tell you you're not? I mean, these are certain answers to certain questions. You're never going to get the bottom line truth. So of course he's going to say that. But as far as taking anything away, I think that's really ridiculous. Kevin paid his dues. He placed in the top, 3 of the Olympia for how many gazillions of years, and he is lifetime qualified. So he can come back anytime he wants and compete. That's his right. And if Phil thinks that that's taken away from anybody's thunder, he's more concerned about his thunder than anybody else's thunder. Trust me. And all that means to me is he's scared.
Let's take one thing in particular that John said and what Phil said in the video. John said that, what else is he going to say? Well, the question was simple. It was about Kevin Levrone's re-entry into the Olympia. Well, Phil went from that into talking about lining up each of the competitors and how he's not talking smack when he says he's killed them over the last few years. It seemed as if he took it from one question and ran with it. What did you make of that?
I didn't actually listen to the video in detail, frankly, because it was all crackled up when I was trying to listen to it. But, I agree with John. Kevin Levrone is like Shawn Ray, like Lee Haney. There's only really a true, two handfuls of people who are like legends, and get the automatic bye for the Olympia. And Levrone's been floating this idea out for like a decade, right? I mean, it's been 10 years that he's been talking about it. And fans get sucked into it and actually think he's going to do it. And here he is, he's going to do it. And he should be applauded for it. It doesn't take away anything from the Olympia. It adds to the Olympia. It adds to the excitement of the Olympia. And if you're Mr. Olympia, it should add to the excitement, because I don't think Heath has ever competed against Levrone, right? So here's his chance to lay it on the line and prove that he is, not 5-time or whatever he's won Mr. Olympia, but 6-time Mr. Olympia. To take offense that a guy has decided, Kevin Levrone has the balls and the audacity to come back after all this time and actually focus on the show and do the show up, go backstage, pump up. He's not certain about the way he's going to look. He may think he's certain, right? But he doesn't know the way his body's going to actually fall together the day of the show. of the last 6 weeks. So I'm sure his level of confidence, although he may portray it as something else, he's going to have self-doubt like all the other guys running into the show have self-doubt. You know what? Every guy, no matter what you say, running into the show has self-doubt. That is just a fact. I've worked with people for 25 years, and I've worked with people who have won shows and people who are going to easily win shows. And guess what? The last 4 days, they're thinking, you know what? Maybe I could be harder. Maybe I could be fuller if I'm harder. Maybe I could have, been this. So there's going to be self-doubt. And for Phil to not, I think it's a mistake as a champion for Phil not to recognize the importance and the magnitude of the event with someone like Kevin Levrone coming back. Because the fact of the matter is, he's either going to get smoked or he's not going to get smoked. And if he gets smoked, it's one thing. But if he doesn't get smoked, if Kevin Levrone is in the first call-out of 8, that means some people who we thought were going to be in the first call-out are left out. That is the most exciting call of the last 5 years of the Mr. Olympia. Not not Kai versus Phil 2 years in a row, but Kevin Levrone being in the mix.
Well, Chris, let me go back to John real quick, because there was one aspect of that video, and John, you've heard the video in its full form. The one part where Phil goes from answering the question about Kevin Levrone's, the significance of him coming back into the competition, going from there, then talking about the thunder stolen, but then he goes into talking about how he has lined each of these competitors up and killed them over the last few years, and he repetitively stated that sentiment. What does that part of the video say to you in terms of making sure to get that sentiment out there?
It sounds to me like he's just doing a lot of ass covering. You look at it this way: when Kevin beats him, what's that gonna? I mean, that's he's setting that up to say that, oh, if I've beaten all of these guys and then Kevin's going to come in and beat me, and then what does that mean to all the rest of these guys? So he's kind of like transferring or diluting the weight of this from purely on his shoulders to like 9 other guys or 8 other guys if Kevin's going to because Kevin will be in the top 10 also. So I just think to me, if I were Mr. Olympia, if I were 5-time Mr. Olympia, 4-time Mr. Olympia, whatever, and I'm coming in there to take my next title, I'm coming in there like Arnold would think. Like, I already won this thing like 2 weeks ago. I'm just showing up tomorrow as a formality to pick up my trophy. My attitude would not be any doubt. My attitude would be exactly like Arnold has been, or Jay Cutler has been, even Ronnie Coleman, Dorian Yates. None of those guys would say, well, if I did this and I did bullshit. They would say, this is nuts. I'm winning this. I'm winning again. What are you, crazy? No one's beating me. And that should be Phil's prevailing attitude. All this other crap that he's talking, all it tells me is he's worried about a lot of stuff, not just Kevin. He's worried about Shawn Rhoden. He's worried about a lot of things. And he's got a lot of things to be worried about. Big Ramy standing next to him with Big Ramy shredded. Phil's going to look like something that, Big Ramy pooped out this morning.
I want to get to that as far as the field and whether or not that's adding to Phil's uneasiness or confidence going into the competition. But we go back in studio now, and Dave is joined by a special guest.
I keep trying to tell this guy to get out of here. He needs to get a couple words in.
I gotta say something about Kevin Levrone. He's a legend. And I have him under exclusive contract, even though I owe out it might be $200,000. I'm not quite sure, but he's a legend. And Phil, I've tried to get him under contract, but for some reason he won't sign with me. I think that he's afraid of Kevin Levrone, the legend, and I'm predicting a Levrone victory, unless Ramy wins, in which case I will offer him everything in my retirement account to sign him. Chris, can you put in a good word?
Steve, get out of here. Get out of here. All right, I got to get he has to get his 2 fucking cents in. I'm sorry about that, but the bottom line is that Kevin Levrone instills fear in people because he's an unknown factor. He's the wild card. He's the guy. It wasn't. Remember when Samir made a comeback? No one thought Samir was going to place top 5 at the Olympia. Levrone, you don't know because you see the guy responding. He's been putting on muscle like crazy. We've seen some shots of him. His size is coming back. He's improving every week. He's a danger. He's a dangerous person, and he's also a crowd favorite. He's the sentimental favorite. We want to see him do well. And Phil knows that. And Phil knows that if it's close and the judges who are all fans of the sport, and they want to see Kevin do well, there's always a chance that it could push him out of there. And that is an unsettling thought. Now, given that fact, I have a feeling that Phil is not worried as much about Kevin as he is about Big Ramy and Rhoden and some of the other guys that are nipping at his heels, including Dexter Jackson. So, Phil puts on a good act. He tries to, put out that I don't really care. I'm not worried. I beat these guys before. But I think he's nervous. I think he's worried. I think if it was Jay Cutler in the Olympia seat now, there would be no doubt on Jay's mind that he's definitely winning the Olympia. I think Phil's a little nervous, and maybe he should be because the last 2 years he didn't look that great. So, is Levrone a factor in Phil's mind? Absolutely. Should it be? No, but I guess if I were Phil, I would let my physique do the talking. I would make sure I show up at my best, and if that means changing things up, changing who's in my corner, helping me, I might consider that too because he hasn't looked that good the last 2 years.
So let's get back to the crux of this particular topic. Now, we are getting questions from viewers about why Phil Heath would release such a video, and given the timing, well, no, Phil Heath has a channel, a YouTube channel, where he does answer these questions around the course of the year, and it just so happened that somebody wanted to know his thoughts on Kevin Levrone entering. We're talking about the tenor of his response, especially the second half of his response, but now we go into the second part of this conversation, and that is the rest of the field, right? Where you have Dexter Jackson, who gave him a scare last year. Shawn Rhoden, who many thought in 2014 should have been Mr. Olympia. And in 2015, in prejudging, could have been considered Mr. Olympia. And then we've talked about the obvious improvements that Big Ramy has made, and maybe this is his time. Point is, the field has gotten a lot better. And Phil Heath, yes, 5-time champions, but the question is this. Is he going in to the 2016 Olympia, and Chris will start with you on this, is he going in a little uneasy or as confident as ever, and why?
I don't know what's in his mind, but I'd like to comment on the lineup. I think the last time Phil probably looked spectacular was 2013. And, if you go back to 2010, 11, the first few years that he was there, the competition, of course, was Jay, right? I mean, last year you had Dexter Jackson markedly improved version versus 2010, 11. Dexter was looking for 3 years. And then he put it together last year. And you have Rhoden last year. You have Big Ramy. These guys weren't around in, Phil's first couple wins. So they're a different animal than just having to compete against Jay. Take Jay out of the equation. No total disrespect for Branch Warren, but, Branch at his best can't stand up next to, in my opinion, a Phil at his best. But look at Dexter last year. Look at Rhoden last year. Look at Wolf last year. It's a totally different lineup. Rolly, we're forgetting about Rolly. In 2010 or 11 when Phil was winning at the beginning, Rolly was like an over-dieted 194-pound bodybuilder. Now he's, I'm not saying he's a threat, but he's a different element. So it's a totally different lineup now. And that's why, right, if you go and see the first call, last year there was a call of 7 or 8 in the very first lineup. Then they narrowed it down to 4. Versus 2 years ago, it was just Kai, Rhoden, and Phil. In other words, it's becoming harder for the judges, I think, to just slam dunk it first, second, third, fourth. And so it's a different lineup. So, to say, quote, I've killed these guys, you've killed some portion of those guys in different years, but you haven't killed it in the last 2. I mean, you haven't killed these guys in the last two. I mean, don't forget, it's come down in 2014 and 13, or 14 and 15. 2 years in a row. 2 of those years it was just you and Kai. So you're not killing Kai. And I understand Kai's not in the show, but I mean, Cedric has beaten Kai, and people can beat Cedric, right? So it's a different lineup. Throw in the unknown of Kevin Levrone. Throw in the unknown of what Phil is actually going to look like. Remember last year at the prejudging, the big red flag was when he said, "What if? What if I show up with I think it was 15 fullness and 13 condition?" Well, that means you don't look like that, because if you did, you'd say, "Guess what? I'm at my best." I just don't think at this level anymore there's any dominance by any bodybuilder at the Mr. Olympia. That said, if Phil comes out and dominates, I'll be the first one to say, maybe not the first one, but black and white is black and white. If he comes out and dominates like he did in 2013, all the power to him. Back up his talk and his threats.
Back to you on this one again. The topic now, and you alluded to it, with the improved field. Aside from Kevin Levrone, that Phil Heath is going to have to go up against now in his 6th title defense. Is he going in as confident as ever, or a little uneasy going to the 2016 Olympia?
It's hard for me to saw open Phil Heath and discover what's in his brain, so I can't comment as to what he might be feeling. But I can tell you what I think he should be thinking about, and what I think a lot of the guys are thinking about. I think this year, well, first of all, let me go back to the killing these guys thing. I don't call squeaking by at your not at your best because you're the political favorite destroying anybody. So to say that you've killed people under those circumstances is not only self-serving but just erroneous and just not true. So the only thing wrong with that statement is that it's completely false. The other thing is that this year, because of Kevin, one of the biggest remembrances of nostalgia of the 90s was the fact that those guys came in crisp and hard and shredded, and that we haven't seen that kind of condition and that kind of presentation since then. So now we know that Kevin is bringing, and I've seen pictures of him. I saw one today. He's more shredded now than he's ever been, and he's still got, 7-8 weeks left? Okay, so we know that Kevin, because he always has, is going to come in shredded, crisp, hard to the bone. Now, you got Chris working with Big Ramy, who's also going to be shredded, hard, crisp to the bone, and Shawn Rhoden, who's going to be shredded, hard, not only because that's the direction they've been going and where they've decided to come in this year, but also because that's what Levrone's bringing to the stage. That's the gauntlet that's been thrown down. It's not going to be a mass show. It's going to be a conditioning show. And we've got the guys lining up. We've got Rhoden, we've got Ramy, we've got Levrone. We all rocks, because this is, if there's ever a year to come in dry and hard, this is it. Now, what's Phil going to do? Phil, if he thinks he's going to slide in at the way he's been going on his downward trend line, it ain't going to happen. So Phil is either going to have to bring a 2013 plus physique to the stage this year, or he might as well just stay home. So if that's what he should be thinking about, or he should just be thinking that, hey, I'm going to be the sixth time reigning Mr. Olympia. No one can touch me. This is all bullshit. I'm just going in to pick up my trophy. Those are the two lines of thought he should be thinking about. But mark my words, Levrone is bringing the conditioning game to the Olympia this year, and this will be the year that we talk about the most insane conditioning we've ever seen at the Olympia.
Chris and John saying that it's tough to really know what Phil Heath's mental state is going into what is going to be his 5th title defense, going for his 6th straight Olympia. But again, with the increased difficulty with the field presented, the mystery factor of Kevin Levrone, how do you assess what Phil Heath must be thinking 34 days out going into the Olympia?
Well, I think John made a very good point. I think there's always a theme of every year, and I think that in the 90s, especially, I remember when Dorian retired in 1997, the 98 Olympia they knew was wide open. Everyone just threw everything they had at that show. Everyone looked phenomenal. Flex Wheeler, Ronnie Coleman, just ridiculously shredded conditioning on stage. Nasser, Shawn Ray, Cormier, Levrone. They were all best, the best they ever had been. And that's why it was such a competitive Olympia, and it was so memorable. I think this Olympia, people are smelling, and sensing that Phil's vulnerable, like he never has been before. I think Rhoden smells it. I think Dexter smells it. That's why Dexter's like, he's so vocal lately and so confident about how he feels going into the show. I know for a fact that Big Ramy's got to be feeling much more confident, because he's harder now at 5 weeks out than he's been at any show he's ever competed at. I mean, Chris has sent me pictures, and I think that Levrone brings that same, I guess, energy that he had when he knew that Dorian was gone, and he said, you know what, this is wide open, I could win the Olympia. I think he feels he could win the Olympia, and when Kevin Levrone is confident about how he looks, he trains harder, he puts more into his prep, and his genetics just revel in that. So I think we're going to see a stupendous top 6 call-out for that first call-out, and people are going to go nuts because the conditioning is going to be so well. If Phil doesn't rise to the occasion and bring his best on prejudging day, not on the night show day, on prejudging day, I think he's going to lose this Olympia. And that's why I feel confident putting it out there that Levrone will win. The truth of the matter is, I don't know if Levrone will win, but I have a feeling that Phil might be beaten this year, and by a number of guys who could beat him. So that's what makes this Olympia so enjoyable and so entertaining to the crowd, because we don't know who's going to win. And usually in years past, it's always a foregone conclusion.
You're watching Iron Debate on RXMuscle.com, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition and Quest Nutrition. Now, Dave mentioned the field and the competition that might win. Well, one competitor that will not be winning the 2016 Olympia is Kai Greene, who is going to be sitting out his second consecutive Olympia, and of course all the talk about whether or not he will ever compete at the Olympia again. Nonetheless, Kai Greene sitting on his 2016 Arnold Classic crown, one of 3 Arnold Classic titles, again not going to be featured at the 2016 Olympia, brings up the question, is he happy? Is he at peace with his decision to not compete at the Olympia and go up against this crowded field with the element of Kevin Levrone and all that's going to be going down in Vegas in 34 days? Or is there a part of him that wishes he was going to be up on that stage? John, let's start with you.
First of all, I want to remember to have had included Dexter Jackson in my list of people who I thought would be the most shredded at the Olympia, because he's sensitive, and I don't want to hurt his feelings. I love Dex, and he will definitely be on that shredded parade. So yeah, I reiterate, it's going to be the year of shreds. Okay, to answer your question, when Kai was here a few weeks ago in my gym, we were talking about this. I didn't feel any sense of lament that he wasn't going to be doing the Olympia anymore. It almost sounded like he felt sort of vindicated, because his direction now is, social media likes, the amount of eyeballs he's getting online to do, to translate into money. Kai is more motivated by money than he is by a Sandow. At least I think. I mean, I may be wrong, but I don't think so. And certainly Kai has been around and competed long enough to, permanently, ensconce himself in this particular position that he holds in bodybuilding history, which is never, ever, ever, ever going to change. He is always going to be the people's champ. He is one of, if not the most popular bodybuilders on Instagram or Facebook. He's got the most followers, or one of the guys with the most followers. I think it's Jay, him, and Dana Lynn Bailey. But it's an amazing position that he's in, because he's the kind of guy that right now can say, I don't care. They need me more than I need them. If they want me, they can come get me and make it worth my while. If not, I'm going to keep winning the Arnold, and I'm going to keep making millions of dollars, because that's what I'm doing now.
Chris, let's go to you on this one, because there is no secret. There is a history there between Kai Greene and the Olympia, and obviously this is going to be the second straight year that he's not going to be competing. Do you see in 34 days Kai Greene sitting at home thinking to himself, what could have been if I could be on that stage sharing the stage with the likes of a Kevin Levrone and all-improved cast and trying to knock off the 5-time champ in Phil Heath?
No, not in 34 days, but maybe in 10 years when he's retired. And, I'll tell you, he's going to be at the Olympia, and every one of his fans is going to say, you should have done the show, you would have won. You could have won. If there was any year for Kai to come in and mix it up and walk away the potential winner, it's this year. Because there's so many apples and oranges. Dexter's not big. He's tremendous. He's spectacular. Rhoden's not that crazy big. He's spectacular. Ramy's insane. Rolly is insane. In a lineup of 8 people. Last year, in a lineup of 4, it was, quote, technically hard for the untrained eye to find Phil, meaning the winner, the current Mr. Olympia, because they all looked good. So imagine with 8 in the lineup. So I think the Kai is missing an opportunity here to go from whatever it is, 1.5 million followers, if that's what's important to him, to, guess what? I just won the Olympia. And I beat Heath, and I beat Levrone, and I beat, Cedric, and I beat Ramy, and Rhoden, and, all these guys. I think his popularity, if that's what's important to him, would be immeasurable, and it would be history. I mean, he could retire and never have to do another show, and people would say, Kai Greene dropped the gauntlet at the 2016 Olympia. He came in and he beat all those guys, including Heath, Levrone, etc. I think any way you measure it, skipping the Mr. Olympia for him is a mistake.
Well,
John, you want to chime in?
yeah, just except for one thing. It's that in Kai's mind, Kai believes in his mind he's not going to win the Olympia. Kai believes in his mind, based on my conversation with him, is that he believes that the politics involved are such that he is not ever going to win.
He's like Trump. He says it's rigged before he even gets there.
Yeah. Well, but I mean,
it's rigged.
But whether that's true or not is irrelevant. That's what he believes. That's what's in his head. So to me, I don't think he's going to be sitting around wishing he had gone on there, because he knows that if he had, he would have gotten beat. So in his mind, that's what he thinks. So I think if he goes to Vegas, he's going to put on his own event and have 4, 5, 6,000 people come to it. He's certainly not going to lose anything popularity wise about not being there. But I think in his mind, there's no choice. So it is what it is.
Dave, let's go to you again. There is no questioning Kai Greene's popularity, the place that he holds in the bodybuilding world. But let's not forget, this is truly one of the greatest bodybuilders of this current era. And the way that Chris is stating it, that this may be a missed opportunity. So if you're a Kai Greene, so also get from 2 perspectives. Kai Greene, how he's going to be feeling not competing at this Olympia. And then from your perspective, is this a missed opportunity?
Well, let's look at it from this perspective. Number 1. Is Kai Greene making millions of dollars right now? Is he losing millions of dollars? Okay, by, number 1, starting his own supplement company. Let's think back to Phil Heath's decision to do that a couple years ago. Is Kai Greene losing a lot of money from not doing the Olympia and getting the prize money? Is Kai Greene missing a golden opportunity in his final peak years of his career? I personally think that Kai Greene will do the Olympia again. I think he's going to do it in 2 or 3 years, probably when there's a new Mr. Olympia up there. And I think it's going to be a disaster, because I don't think that Kai is going to be the same bodybuilder he is today. I think there's a certain amount of fear in there. I think he's not admitting it. I think that he's rationalizing in his mind, well, they'll never let me win the Olympia. It's a good cop-out to never do it. I'll just be the champion of the Arnold Classic. Well, that's like the big fish going to the little pond and eating up all the little fish in there. I mean, how hard is it for Kai Greene to win the Olympia? To win the Arnold Classic. I mean, he's been second at the Olympia for how many years? So to me, I think no one cares who are running the Olympia, whether Kai Greene does it or not. No one's going to go to him and beg him to come and do the show. They don't give a crap. They'll make a new like Vince McMahon or Joe Weider said, we'll just make new champions. You know, they don't care. They're not going to kowtow to anyone. The sport. Kai Greene is not bigger than the sport. The sport will always be bigger than Kai Greene, even though he's a very big personality. And I think he's missing a huge opportunity at the end of his career. Sometimes you got to just suck it up and deal with it. I don't think that Kai Greene is being held back. I don't think that he's purposely not being allowed to win the Olympia. I don't agree with that. I think that bodybuilding is full of felons and miscreants and people who have done crazy stuff, and it's never held them back from winning major titles, okay, before. It's just part of the nature of the beast. So I think Kai is rationalizing in his head. He might have a bad taste in his mouth for whatever business decision went bad when he left Muscle Meds and lost his AMI contract. But you know what? Enough is enough. You know what I mean? Put it aside. Get back to what you love doing, because you know what? You don't have that many years left to do it. And like Chris and John said, regret is a terrible thing, especially 10 years from now when you say to yourself, I could have won the Olympia.
Well, we're talking about a competitor, as Dave states, in the last few years of his peak. We now transition to our third topic, and now we're talking about competitors who are now entering into their years of peak performance, into their formative years. And you think of competitors like Justin Compton, like Nathan Diasha, like Cody Montgomery, Rashid Oldacre, who just took the USA Championships last weekend, Dallas McCarver. This represents your new crop of young and hungry bodybuilders. And whenever we talk about them, especially around the time of the Olympia, there is always a question, can one of them get into the top 10? Can one of them get into the top 12? Well, let's not talk about that in particular. Let's talk about, of this crop, who do you see the most promise out of? And when can we start to see some big things out of them? When it comes to the Arnold, when it comes to the Olympia, Chris, will start with you. Out of this young crop, who excites you the most?
I think likely, it's hard to say. They're all really impressive. Rashid is really impressive. I went to the USA, and I was at the Nationals in Miami last year, and he is got a lot of big, freaky muscle that is oozing potential and maturing fast. And I think a little bit more muscle maturity on this guy, and he's going to be really dangerous for people to handle because he's got so much muscle everywhere. I think he's the type of guy who can easily win a pro show first time out if he's right on the money. And all those other names are I'm incredibly impressed by all these guys. They have tons of muscle. They seem to be very driven, very focused, and they're all freaky in their own way. Why I stutter literally on saying who's the best of the crop is simply because I haven't seen them at an Olympia show. And that's when when you go to the Olympia is not the Arnold. When you go to the Olympia, you see, oh shit, Dexter really is bigger than I thought he was. He's a lot bigger than he thought, and he's a lot harder than I thought he was. And that's what runs through these guys, the ones you just named, who technically they're all bigger than Dexter. But somehow, right, when Dexter gets on stage, you say, well, Dexter's bigger than, pound for pound or, density for density. So it's hard to say because I haven't seen him in the big shows. And, I may be jumping ahead. I just saw Rashid in an amateur show, right, with amateurs, guys who are just doing junior nationals. So it could be a poor review of what his true potential is. But he still jumps out at me as, potential super freak in the future.
Now, on that note, we are also going to have, for those unaware, we're going to be live with Akeem Williams, one of those young and up-and-coming bodybuilders. We're going to have him live in studio. Of course, he just won his first ever pro show this past weekend at the 2016 Tampa Pro. It's going to be live with here on RXMuscle.com. John, let's go to you. Out of this young crop, who excites you the most?
Say that again?
Yeah, of this young crop that we mentioned, the Justin Comptons, the Dallas McCarvers, the Nathan Diashes, Akeem Williams, Rashid Oldacre, Cody Montgomery, so on and so forth. Out of this young crop, who excites you the most? Give us 2 or 3.
Well, I have to admit, I have not really been paying that close attention to the I've seen who do impress me. Obviously, Rashid is. I think he's. I look at it. I look at it in terms of potential, and I see a lot of potential in this kid. Dallas McCarver also. I see a lot of potential in him. Cody Montgomery, I see a lot of potential in him. The thing is that I don't see any of them as much potential as they have, and as amazing as they look in the amateurs. I don't see any of them waltzing onto the Olympia stage and making an impact. And the reason I say that is not in to diss any of them, either personally or collectively, but just because of the sheer paucity over the years of people who have actually done that. It's just a really, really rare thing. And especially today, especially this year, this Olympia is probably going to be, at least in the first 5 or 6 places, probably the most impressive lineup we have ever seen. Maybe ever, not only since the 90s, but maybe ever at all, ever, because we have a 90s guy.
Bold statement, yeah.
So I can't imagine any of these guys, as good as they are, walking into that lineup and sticking out in any way, shape, or form in a way that's going to capture a judge's attention long enough to put them up, in the top ranks. So, and it's just, maybe it could happen, but just history proves itself. It just hardly ever happens. The show we did the other day, where we're trying to figure out how many guys, Shawn Ray won, very few, very, very few young guys came out of nowhere, dominated the amateurs, turned pro rather quickly, and then went right into the top ranks of the pros. It just doesn't happen. You need the maturity, you need the experience, you need to grow into being a pro. Battling weight classes has notoriously held people back, in a lot of ways. So when you get into the pros, you kind of settle in, you find out, where you are at in that whole lineup. And when you look at the Olympia, this is the best in the world. And if you really think that you belong up there, then go. But if that's the judges are going to let you know one way or another. And like I keep saying, it's just the fact that it just doesn't happen. It happens so rarely. So these guys have a lot of potential, and I see a lot of potential in them, but I don't see any of them coming in and upsetting the apple cart at the Olympia this year.
Dave, let's go to you on this one. John's been consistent in that these young and exciting bodybuilders, he doesn't see anyone jumping this year and claiming a top 10 finish, but let's keep it to what it is right now as far as their future potential. Out of this young core, who excites you?
Well, let's go back to when guys were able to just jump in and make a big difference. And that was when Gaspari, the Labradas, the Flex Wheelers, Kevin Levrone's jumping in and making a big impact relatively quickly. That was in the era when the guys weren't that big. Then when all those guys jumped in the 90s, guys got huge. And then Dorian came around. And then all of a sudden, guys who were coming out of the, turning pro, no longer made impacts in the pros right away. And it took them a long time to kind of work their way through the lineups, the Dennis Jameses, even I'm trying to think who would be the Victor Martinez's. These guys didn't make a big impact right off the bat. They had to kind of grow into their bodies to kind of be able to compete with the bigger guys. Then in the early 2000s, we kind of started losing some of these mass monsters, dropped off the map, and guys started coming up, and you got the Phil Heaths who made a big impact relatively quickly. But not many other guys did. Even Shawn Rhoden, who took forever to turn pro, wasn't a huge impact guy right away until he ran into Chris Aceto and then started, working with him. But I think it's harder now because the guys do have more muscle. They have a lot more detail. So the guys who turn pro are having a tough time. Now, also, a lot of these young guys are jumping into the mix right away. And young muscle just doesn't look as impressive as mature muscle that's been, honed over 10, 15 years. So I think that's where that problem runs in. There are some new mass guys coming up. Dallas McCarver packing a ton of muscle. Justin Compton Akeem Williams, Rashid Oldrich. These are guys that have oodles of muscle that I think once they refine them, we're going to see them be the new crop that is going to be battling it out. And the truth of the matter is, we won't know who the guys are that are going to be the best, and it's hard to make a prediction because I don't know the work ethic of all these guys. I see Dallas lifting real heavy. I know Akeem has a huge, crazy work ethic, Rashid as well. So it's going to boil down to who wants it more, who's got better genetics, and who has better longevity, meaning who's not going to get injured. So there's a lot of variables. If I was a betting man, I don't know who I'd bet on, to be honest with you, in that new crop. It's a tough one. I think that of all of them, I think that Rashid and Akeem have the most potential. That doesn't mean that they're going to realize their potential ultimately 5 years from now. But it's exciting to know that we have this new crop of guys that we didn't have 5 years ago. And to be honest with you, I thought bodybuilding was in trouble because we didn't have these guys. So to me, this adds a level of excitement to the show and to the shows moving forward because I love watching these guys evolve and their physiques evolve.
That's going to do it for the debate portion of this show. Our producer, Johnny Styles, is pulling your questions if you're watching us live on our YouTube channel. If this is the first time you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button below. We've gained about 4,000 followers in the last couple of weeks, and this is what motivates us to put out this kind of content for you on a almost daily basis. Of course, we have Muscle in the Morning, that's 5 times a week, your daily recap of the world of bodybuilding. We have this show, our Live With one-on-one interview show. Akeem Williams is going to be joining us in studio within the course of the hour, so keep it locked to RXMuscle.com and our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow us Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That is where we update everything, and especially over the course of the next 5 weeks going into the Olympia. If you're not already registered to the Muscle Central Forum, that is the forum on RXMuscle.com. Once you register, and it's free to register, you'll have access to all features of RXMuscle.com. Most importantly, the contest galleries. And of course, in 4 or 5 weeks with the Olympia, that is what you're going to want to see. Let's go to our chat room. Ricard A, who has a better chance between Rolly Winkler and Big Ramy, 2 up-and-comers? John, you want to take this one first?
Well, I can only speak to Rolly on this one because I've seen a recent picture of him. And the recent picture I saw of him required actually 2 pieces of paper put together to fit them all on it because I don't know where this guy has been and what he's been doing, but I'm telling you, he is at least double the size he was when he first came out. Maybe more than that, though. Chris would know better than me. But I am extremely impressed with the mass that this guy has on and the shapes of it. He's got some interesting shapes, especially his triceps and his shoulders. I don't know. The tattoo up here. I mean, it's just everything kind of just. It just all works. So, I think he's going to be a definite force to contend with. No disrespect on the other guy. I just can't place him in my head.
Chris, Big Ramy, Rolly Winkler, what do you got?
Oh, you said Big Ramy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, fuck. I got to answer that over again.
Oh, my God.
Sorry, Chris. So you're asking me Rolly Winkler
Well,
or Big
the
Ramy?
question in the chat room was, Johnny, you want to show that again? I wanted to accurately state his question, but I think it was more of a comparison right now.
What's the chance between Rolly and Ramy?
Right. What's the chance? And I'm going to assume, let's assume, for argument's sake, that he's talking about this upcoming Olympia with these 2 up-and-comers, Big Ramy and Rolly Winkler for the 2016 Olympia.
Yeah. Well, Ramy is, I've said from day one, Big Ramy, if he ever hits it, he'll be Mr. Olympia for as long as he ever wants to be. So you got to preface everything I say with that. Rolly, and I maintain everything I said before about Rolly. You got these 2 guys are the kinds of guys that just screw everything up. Because, we have this whole nice plan, 1 through, 3 or 4 or 5, and then you got these 2 guys, and you're like, what are we going to do with these guys? And then they fuck up even more and come in like in incredible shape, and it really fucks things up. So, it's... I think either one of those 2 at their best can definitely cause a lot of damage in the lineup.
Chris, let's go to you. The question again was, who do you see performing better at this Olympia, Rolly Winkler, Big Ramy?
I say Ramy not because I work with him. I say Ramy because he's placed higher than Rolly at the previous couple of Olympias. So, he's got that going for him, that he's already been there and beaten Rolly. And that's not to say, wow, I'm going to help Ramy, and because I'm helping him, he's going to be better. I think that Ramy had a good non-traveling off-season, which helped his own physique no matter who would be working with him a lot. And I think that no matter who would be working with him, just by the fact that he's a freak and trained another full year, by definition, he's going to be better than he's been. It's not like he's got 20 years of training under his belt to move the needle. You got to just put in one Rocky Balboa year of training. It's the guy's got, 7 years of training under his belt. So, one full more year is another, 15% more training time that he has under his belt, and it's got to show up on his body somewhere.
Dave, let's go to you on this one again. The question was, let's let Dave get in on this first. The question was, who do you see between Rolly and Big Ramy? And we're assuming that he
it's
means
easy. You don't even have to
Olympia.
preface it. Big Ramy kills Rolly Winkler on stage. He's got better structure. He's bigger, and with Chris's help, he's going to be just as hard. No contest. Go to the next question.
Let's go to the next one. This one from RTG34. Why doesn't Chris work with Kai Greene? And did George Farah? That's a pretty bold question. Did George Farah ruin bodybuilding? I don't know what you mean by that, but Chris will have to go to you on this one since you were mentioned by the user.
Why don't I work with Kai Greene? I do. No, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be a bum show?
Breaking news.
No, because, you know what? Listen, what you need to understand when you help people get ready for bodybuilding shows, you can't help everybody. In other words, people mesh with other people, in their own good way. People have personalities that don't clash with their quote guru or their trainer. Kai has had a couple different people help him over the years, and he's doing great. Say what you want about him. He's got 3 Arnold Classic wins. He's been runner-up in the Olympia 2 times. If I was working with him, there's absolutely positively no guarantee that he'd be 1% better, I feel. I don't think if I was working with Kai that I could guarantee nothing. Maybe that's because, I'm like a dictator. Meaning I just like to know that if I say ABC, you do ABC. And I don't know if Kai follows whoever he works with in terms of that that amount of detail and minutia. So the reason I don't work with him is there's only so many people you can help, right? And then the second part is there's no guarantee that if I was working with him, he could be 1% better anyway.
Well, the second part of the question, which I thought was a little bit bold, but has George Farah ruined bodybuilding? I'm not sure what he means by that, but I'm just putting it out there.
No, he's just ruined the truth. No. George is a character. You just got to come to understand that George is a contest prep guy who preps tons of people, and he's always out for his next client, and that could be Rashid, it could be Akeem, it could be Dallas McCarver, it could be Cody, it could be Justin. I can guarantee you one thing about those people I just named. I can guarantee you he has spoken to every single one of them and told each and every one of them, if you work with me, brother, you could be number 1. So it's just his way, and actually, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. The only wrongness about it, by definition, they all could be number 1, so it can't be true, as John would say. That's the one problem with it. It can't be true, is that he will approach those people when they're most vulnerable, meaning Justin Compton, tremendous bodybuilder, comes off a disappointing Arnold Classic. somebody who preps people for bodybuilding competitions, quote, that's their job, that's how they make their money. You don't, it's terrible tact to find someone like that after prejudging when you're not in the mix and say, you could be number one.
Again, the questions seem to be a little out of left field as far as George Farah, but again, that goes to show the inside culture of RXMuscle and the RXMuscle user community. But here, to defend himself, George Farah joins us live in studio.
Yes, Sid, I am very upset with Chris Aceto. I used to call him brother, and I do not call client on like you say I do. I do not. I say you work with Aceto because he is best. But if you want to win Olympia, you work with me. That's all. And that is the way it is, you know. So, George, can I finish this debate? Where'd you come from? Did Blackman bring you here? Listen, I used to call you a friend, but you badmouth me all the time, so I don't want to know anything about you anymore. Okay, go. All right. Anyway, the bottom line is, I don't think that Chris really, and I'm speaking for Chris, but I know Chris. I don't think Chris would work with Kai because I don't think that there's anything left for Kai to prove at this point. And I think we pretty much said that Kai has been his best, and he just doesn't want to do the Olympia anymore. You can't make someone do something. But Chris, here's a good scenario. If in 3 years from now Kai came to you and said, "I made a mistake. I want to win the Olympia. Can you help me?" Would you do it?
I don't know where. Honestly, Dave, I don't know if I'll be doing bodybuilding
Yes, you
in
will.
3 years.
Yes, you will.
2 years, I will.
Yes, you will.
So
I'll be sending you pictures, Dave, like right now during the show. Check this picture out of Rhoden. Check this picture out of Cedric. Check this picture out of Ramy. We don't know. You know what? 3 years is a long time. We mentioned the up-and-comers. We don't know if two of those have crazy breakouts where we're like, holy shit. Those 5 guys or 6 guys, the new guys on the block, here we are in 2019. Bleckman's out of business. Romano's as happy as a pig. And and these guys, Akeem and Dallas and, whoever we just mentioned in there, they're number 1 and 2. You never know.
So we'll take one more question, and we of course mentioned the Van.
But Farah is to contest prep with Hillary Clinton is to the politics. He's our own Hillary Clinton.
What does that mean? Explain yourself, John. Explain it.
He's a pathological liar.
No, that'd be Trump, dude.
He will say absolutely anything to get somebody to be his client. So, I mean, just like she'd say absolutely anything to get elected, and she's a pathological liar. I see Farah and Clinton in very, very comfortable bedfellows.
He might be her vice president. He might be our vice president for all we know.
So if we could transition back to the Olympia. Well, I wanted to go back to that first question. Why does Dave cry during Oksana Grishina's routine? A previous user, before all the mentions of anabolic chicken, asked what we thought. And it's funny he mentioned the name because it's one that I've been thinking about. Had a hot post-Olympia tour, but really isn't getting a lot of mentions. And that is William Bonac. Where do you see, or what are your thoughts on William Bonac going into the 2016 Olympia? Chris, we'll start with you on this one.
William Bonac is a tremendous bodybuilder, freaky when he comes out. In the lineup against, if he's going to stand between a Rolly, who's got height and breadth to him, right, width, and a Dallas McCarver, no matter how much muscle he has, it's just not going to have the impact that a taller guy has. Ton of muscle, tremendous condition at different shows. I mean, I think that showed up last year. I mean, we all thought he looked tremendous last year, but essentially, is he a top 6 guy? Ask Dexter. Dexter's a fan of his physique, Dave. Johnny knows. Johnny, you know.
John, your thoughts on the conqueror, William Bonac?
What Chris just said, the height issue is an issue. But I think if you're talking about specifically this year, this Olympia, you're going to need to be a tanned Mack truck to come in and do anything to upset the apple cart that already exists. So I don't care who you are, you're not getting in. So I mean, unless you are just like the space shuttle landed in the back and you walked out, from another planet. That's the only other way you're going to get in there. So yeah, he's a lot of muscle, but just you can't stand with giants if you're not one yourself. I mean, it just doesn't fit. No offense, but the way I see it.
I'm offended, John, by your use of the term apple cart. That's a Shawn Rayism.
Dave, let's finish off with you on William Bonac. Top 10, top 12. Where do you see him placing?
Yeah, he'll be top 10. He'll probably be like 10th. But I don't think he's going to be a factor. I think he's way more polished. I think he'll beat Dallas McCarver. How about that for
there you go.
Production?
That's a good prediction.
I think he will. I think he's more complete from behind than Dallas is. I'm very impressed with Dallas from the front and sides, kind of. I'm not impressed from him from behind. I think that big, huge tattoo across his back saying McCarver, I think it's limiting his back development. Why do bodybuilders like that, guys that they know that they could be potential Mr. Olympians, why would they get a huge freaking McCarver tattooed across the middle of their back? I just don't get it. I mean, it's such a distraction. Chris, can you answer that for me?
No, I have no idea why. I hate tattoos. I'm like Bob Gruskin. I hate tattoos.
Right? I mean, especially for a guy of his caliber.
I just think in a sport, I know, John, but
you're not doing the Olympia, John.
In a sport in which, it's distracting to me. I can't imagine like Jay with a tattoo on his shoulder or chest and shoulder or back, or a winner. Phil Heath, the 5-time winner, with something on his shoulder, back, or to me it just seems distracting.
We have one more question, and I believe this is specifically for Dave. Is from Jason McLean. Which year Kevin Levrone physique beats Phil? That's a great question, Dave. So which year of Kevin Levrone's physique beats Phil Heath today?
2016.
I would probably say every year except for maybe the last one, 2003, where he wasn't really his best at that year. I don't know what was going on. That's when Dexter beat him.
Dave, can I give a homework assignment?
I would certainly say 96. Levrone destroys everyone.
Yes,
he was great in 96 when he beat Flex Wheeler at the Arnold Classic. Not because I helped him, but just because he was at the peak right there. But you know what? When he came back in 98. He didn't look that good at the Olympia. He wasn't dry enough. But if you remember, he went on to win like 1 million Grand Prix in Europe. Yeah, I think he won $100,000 cash in Russia. They had
the Hungarian one. He looked incredible,
right? I want to make one statement about Levrone. I think he should grow his hair back. I like when he has some hair on his head. I don't like when he shaves his head. For some reason.
Except it's not going to follow the same pattern.
Why? I don't think he has. I don't think
years ago.
Does he have hair loss? I don't think he does. I think he just likes to shave his head. No, you have hair loss. I do, but he doesn't have hair loss. I think he just likes to shave it because he thinks it's cool. But I like him with a little hair in his head. I got to be honest with you. Not that it matters what I think, but I think it complements his physique. It gives him a cooler look on stage.
Well, John, I wanted to just finish off with you on this one. Do you agree? Do you share the same sentiment with Dave? Essentially, Kevin Levrone every year except, what was it, 2003, Dave?
Yeah.
2003 that would beat Phil Heath today. That's a strong statement. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember that 98 showing very well, and it was just spectacular. I mean,
it was huge.
And I just think they're next to each other at 100%. They're two entirely different physiques to begin with. So I mean, you gotta decide which flavor you like, the best to begin with. But in and of itself, body part for body part, what I've been seeing lately, Phil has these incredible arms, and but he's still limited by that narrow clavicle, and that's where Levrone is like twice as wide as him. So I don't think that with the amount of muscle that Kevin's going to put on that frame, and the fact that frame is so aesthetically more pleasing, than Phil's. Phil is going to have trouble. I mean, in any of those years except 2002, 2001, 2002,
Three.
any of those years. And I think, mark my words, this year is going to be better than all of them.
That is going to do it for this episode. I don't know, Dave, you want to just take this real quick? Sherman Tank, if Levrone wins or places top 3, do you guys see him coming back? That's a good question. Coming back next year in either of those scenarios?
I think we see him come back and win the Arnold Classic.
All right, with that, that will do it for this episode of Iron Debate, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition and Quest Nutrition. For Chris Aceto, John Romano, our producer Johnny Styles, and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We will see you in about 30 to 45 minutes live with Akeem Williams right here on RXMuscle.com.